I have here examples of notebooks with exposed spine. We have the French stitch and the Coptic, which is the one we are going to learn. You may print your own covers if you like, but for this tutorial, we will just be using a plain cover. I will be making a separate video on how I print these covers. This is how a Coptic stitch looks like. The notebook opens flat when used, so it is easier to write. Though there is no glue added, the stitches are enough to hold the pages together securely. Since the cover are just folded in the middle, you have the option to print whatever you like on the other side. Hi, welcome. I'm Neri and this is my first video on this channel. Tutorial for today is about how to craft a notebook with exposed binding as I have mentioned earlier. The type of binding we are going to use is Coptic stitch. This is basic book binding for beginners. Learning this type of binding can help you create and design a lot of journals for yourself or even for your small business. Know the basic first and then you can improvise to make your projects more interesting. For basic binding, you don't need expensive tools to start with. The most important thing is you have a time to do it and paper to bind. Let's start. The basic tools needed for this project are metal ruler, bone folder, cutter, piercing awl, curved needle. You may use a straight needle, but a curved one makes it easier to bind. Clip is optional. Beeswax, lighter, is also optional. Next is the punch guide. For the punch guide, this is do-it-yourself. Just get a piece of cardboard. Any cardboard will do as long as you will be able to see the guide. Fold it in the middle, cut with the same size as the height of the notebook. Mark where the holes are supposed to be, making sure they are spaced equally. For the Coptic stitch, it doesn't matter whether you have an even or odd number of holes. For this project, I have 5 holes. Last one is the waxed thread. You may use ordinary or embroidery thread, but to avoid tangling, you must coat the thread with a beeswax like the one in the image before proceeding with your binding. I have here 56 sheets for the pages, 2 sheets of orange paper for the fly pages, and 2 300 GSM paper for the cover. Each set of paper folded together in the middle are called signatures. For this project, I will be using 6 sheets for each signature. The standard uses 4 sheets per signature, but it also depends on the thickness of the paper. Start folding each signature equally in the middle using a bone folder. Continue doing the same on all the sheets remaining until you are done. For the first and last signature, which also has the cover and the fly pages, I only used 4 sheets for the pages since the cover is already thick. Now all the signatures are already folded, we are ready to punch our holes. I have here a piece of leather to protect my cutting mat. It's up to you whether to use something to protect your mat or not. So here is the punch guide. You just have to place it in the middle of the signature and then start punching the holes. Do the same in all the signatures until you are done. Here's a tip. You must place all the signature facing the same side so that the holes are properly aligned when you do the binding. Now we are done with our hole punching. It's time to start binding. But first, we have to prepare our binding thread. I picked a bright orange thread to match the fly pages, but also for you to be able to see clearly how the stitches are done. The beauty of exposed binding is that you can mix and match your thread's color according to the color palette you have chosen for your notebook design. Here is how I thread the needle. I have 10 signatures here, so I measure the thread according to the number of signatures. Start binding by inserting the needle from the outer part of the signature. You have to leave at least around 2 inches long of tail so you have enough thread to hold when you make a knot later. Get another signature. I prefer to use a clip to hold them together so I would not be using my fingers alone. It's a bit tiring, but it is optional if you can manage for the signatures not to move while holding them together. Now bring the needle from the inside out and then insert it on the second signature that you just have added. Be careful when pulling the thread to avoid snagging on the corners of the pages so it will not crumple. Also, don't pull the thread too hard or tight as it may rip the paper. Just put enough tension so the signatures won't move. Usually, making the base of the binding is the hard part, especially for beginners, but with enough practice, you'll get the hang of it. The third and remaining signatures would be easier to attach. After the last hole, you have to bring the needle back to the first hole where you have started using the same procedure. When you have already reached the first hole, make 2 slip knots to secure. Now you are ready to add the third signature. Make sure that they are properly aligned before starting your stitch again. After pulling out the needle from the second hole, you have to loop over just under the stitch on the second signature and bring the needle back into the same hole. Do the same on the succeeding holes. Make sure that the loop is in the same direction on all the loops you are going to make so the stitching will be uniform and it is pleasant to look at. After the last loop, add another signature and do the same process of stitching again. Do this on all the signatures until you are done. Just a tip, it is hard to bind on a flat surface. Some bind by bringing the signatures up, but I prefer binding on the edge of the table. You may also use a stack of books so you have a space to move about on the side where you are doing the binding. As you can see here, instead of cutting the tail, I just integrate or include it in the loop so I have a more sturdy stitch. Though this is not needed, it is just my preference. Also, I make a knot on both ends of the binding. This is also a self-preference. You don't have to do that. Looping under the signature is enough. I thought I was recording how to end the binding, only to discover later that I was not able to press the record button. So here is how I end the binding. Although I am using a scrap paper, the process is still the same. Since I am using a waxed thread, I cut close to the knot and then singed the excess thread using a lighter. If you are using an ordinary thread, you may bring back the needle inside in the last hole and make the knot there, and then leave a space when you cut so the thread won't untangle. Here is now the finished binding. Now we are ready to trim the edges. You may use a metal ruler and an anti-cutter to trim the edges if you don't have a cutting machine yet. So in this case, I am using a Polaris rim cutter. I will be placing a link below where you can purchase this kind of cutter in case you are interested to purchase one. Using a cutting machine makes life easier. You save time and effort, so it is worth the investment. If I were you, I will really try considering buying this. Here is now the finished project. I added some stickers on the cover so it won't look bare. You may also decorate your notebook according to your preference. As you can see, this also has rounded corners. I used this cute corner cutter. Hoping you have learned something from this video. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button. Leave your thoughts in the comment section, and if you also have some questions, just leave it there and I will get back to you as soon as I am able. See you around. Bye!